I got Megan pregnant. I want a divorce. John suddenly knelt down and said this. Next to him, Megan stood quietly, looking down and gently rubbing her belly. I had sensed the signs of this coming, so I calmly looked down at the thinning top of John's head. All right. Fine, let's get a divorce. John raised his head. His face was full of hope. His cheeks were so relaxed with an unmistakable smile that it was infuriating. Then I'll leave this house. Here's the divorce papers. You'll take care of Dad. What? Taking care of Dad is your job. For the first time, I frowned at John's words. An affair and divorce were within my expectations. But being forced to continue caring for my father-in-law was beyond understanding. Once I divorced John, his father would be a complete stranger to me. Why should I continue to care for a difficult stranger? Impossible. Because Megan is. John has destroyed his simple, happy family by himself. And they don't yet realize that the path ahead is a quagmire. I am Mary, a 56-year-old housewife. I live with my husband, who is in his 60s, and my father-in-law. Our kids moved out 5 years ago. Around that time, my father-in-law, who lived alone, fell and got injured. Despite insisting I can live on my own, he finally agreed to move in with us. He's 90 this year. Despite his age, he's mentally sharp, has a great appetite, and never misses his daily walk. However, he can't manage those walks without my help. My father-in-law, who could barely put any weight on his legs, would lean his entire weight on me just to walk. Indoors is one thing, but outside is really tough. Even a small curb feels like a massive obstacle. He's average in size, but I'm just a regular woman in my 50s. I don't have extraordinary strength, nor am I experienced in caregiving. A short walk in front of our house feels like an excruciating ordeal. The doctor recommended a wheelchair for long distances, but my father-in-law refuses to give up walking on his own feet. Dad really is impressive. He has a strong will. John takes pride in his father. The father has always been a strict and authoritarian figure, but he worked hard and protected his family. I get that John respects him as his ideal man. Here's this month's share. Take it. At the beginning of every month, my father-in-law gives me $300. It's supposed to be pocket money, but it's really a reward for taking care of him. Shortly after moving in, he handed me some money saying, "This is for you, Mary. Use it as you like." I was impressed by his courteous and considerate nature. However, he's not as great as I thought. You're a completely useless woman. After living together for 5 years, I receive lectures from him almost every day. I only drink freshly brewed hot tea. Make it again immediately. I had just prepared breakfast and brought him to the table. This time it took longer because he needed to use the bathroom on the way. The toast is not warm. The soup isn't steaming. Hey, are you trying to make me eat cold food? Are you mocking me? Though he doesn't shout, he's extremely intimidating. Even if I was right, arguing would make it longer, so I quietly reheated the meal. I've been instructed to ensure he's ready to eat as soon as he sits down at the table. However, lately, my father-in-law has been particularly unsteady on his feet. It takes him longer to walk than before, making it difficult to balance preparing food so it's hot and ready when he arrives. Hey, don't you have anything to say? As I poured hot tea into his cup, my father-in-law asked. I'm sorry. I'll be more careful next time. Humph. As long as I apologize, he feels satisfied. It's frustrating, but it's better than enduring a long lecture. In his working days, he held a high social status. He earned more than the average person and reportedly received $1 million retirement package. Even now, years after retiring, he occasionally reminisces about his past glories, probably viewing me as a useless subordinate. Living with my difficult father-in-law can be exasperating. But I don't give up because of John. Next holiday, let's leave Dad with a helper and visit your parents. You always take care of my dad. So we should visit yours and show some filial piety. One day, John came home with a bag from a famous confectionery store. He had gotten some sweets that my parents liked during his work break. Dealing with my stubborn dad must be tough, right? Thank you, Mary. These words of appreciation are worth 100, no, 1,000 times more than the $300 monthly allowance. John's kindness lightens my weary body. Since we got married, John has always valued my family. We visit my parents about once a month. They like John a lot. And so does my sister, Megan. Wow, John, welcome. As soon as we arrived at my parents' house, Megan greeted us at the door. Still single, Megan lives with our parents. She spread her arms wide and cheerfully said, "I've been waiting." Megan is 17 years younger than me, so she'll always seem young to me. She'll always be my adorable little sister. But she's 39 now. She's no longer a child who should be clinging to John's arm. Megan, don't cling to John. Oh, come on. John's my big brother. When I married John at 30, Megan was only 13. Having never gone through a rebellious phase, she has adored John as her big brother since then. I was born when my parents were young and grew up as an only child for a long time. But approaching their 40s, my parents decided they wanted another baby, and they had Megan. She was doted on by everyone around her. Though a bit spoiled, she grew into a confident woman with a strong sense of self. Wow, Megan always gives such a warm welcome to such an old guy. I'm glad. Oh, John, don't call yourself old. Megan poked John's forehead playfully with her finger. Well, I've passed 60. Really? You look so young, John. Hey, do you work out? Your arms are really strong. Megan naturally touched John's arm. John was a little bit flirtatious in his delight. Okay, that's enough. No flirting in front of your wife. Oh, that wasn't my intention. John straightened his posture when I glared at him. Megan pouted her lips and gave a provocative smile. John and Megan have always gotten along well since our marriage. The reason is simple. When Megan was still a child, John would give her allowance and presents every time they met. It's only natural she grew attached to such a kind big brother. Oh, by the way, I have some gifts. These sweets are for your parents. And this chocolate is for you, Megan. No way. These are hard to get and you have to wait in long lines. How did you manage that? For you, Megan, nothing's too hard. Megan jumped up and down like the 13-year-old she was when she first met John. As expected, John. I love you. A kind husband who adores his wife's sister. It's a heartwarming sight. Though Megan's flattery can be a bit much, she and John are more than 20 years apart. It's like a parent-child relationship, so there's no way anything suspicious could happen. Growing up surrounded by adults, Megan has always been good at charming people, regardless of gender or age. While I hadn't seen their closeness as a problem before, lately, I've started to feel uneasy. I took the opportunity to talk to Megan alone. Hey, Megan. I saw something the other day. Even though she's my sister, bringing up someone's private matters is awkward. My voice grew quieter. Megan, are you dating a much older man? What? Why? Megan's eyes darted briefly. She neither confirmed nor denied it. I saw you arguing with a man the other day. It looked like you were breaking up with him. I happened to see Megan arguing with a man when I was taking my father-in-law to the hospital. I hesitated to intervene, but Megan seemed to brush it off. The man was pleading, "Please break up with me." It was evidently a breakup. I'm a bit worried, but it feels inappropriate for a sister to interfere in such matters. Still, there's something bothering me. The man seemed really emotional. Are you okay? Well, yeah. But I was surprised. Megan's boyfriend is quite a bit older. He looked like he was over 60. His hair was mostly gray, making him look around John's age, maybe even older. Megan responded with a smug expression. Well, I do have a thing for older men. I never knew Megan was interested in men old enough to be her father. Now, her familiarity with John is even more concerning. Sensing my unease, Megan smiled mischievously. Oh, sis, are you worried I might make a move on John? Don't worry, he's totally off limits, off limits. She said it cheerfully. Yet, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. A few months later, I unexpectedly stumbled upon another of Megan's dramatic scenes. She was arguing with the same man in the hospital parking lot. "Please, just break up with me." Once again, it was a breakup conversation. The man looked like he was about to cry, but Megan coldly brushed him off. "No way. I'm not breaking up with you." Megan waved lightly and left the scene, leaving the dejected man behind. As skilled as she is at charming men, this was different. She was toying with his heart. Unable to stand it, I rushed to the man left behind. "Are you okay?" When I spoke, he nodded weakly. "Excuse me, but who was that woman?" Asking this without revealing I was her sister felt deceitful. The man, with a pained expression, muttered, "She's my wife." What? A whirlwind of emotions swept through me. The more I listened to the truth, the more confused I became. It didn't make sense. It couldn't be. Not sweet Megan. I couldn't help but recall the image of Megan when she was a little girl. I found it impossible to believe what the man tearfully told me. How was I supposed to face Megan after this? Distracted, I made several mistakes in caring for my father-in-law, earning his reprimands. But I was too preoccupied with thoughts of Megan to hear his lectures. At times like these, John was my pillar of support. He always listened calmly and guided me to the right answers. However, lately, he seemed busy with work, coming home late and leaving little time for conversation. When I tried to talk during meals, he reacted negatively, leading to more frequent nights out. It felt like he was avoiding me, not just busy. I didn't understand why, as we hadn't fought or anything. It felt like he suddenly disliked me for no reason. Worried about Megan, and now feeling distant from John. Though it was clear he was annoyed, I couldn't shake the belief that John was a kind husband. One night, when John returned late again, I couldn't hold back any longer and started speaking quickly. "I'm sorry to bother you when you're tired, but can we talk?" John deliberately avoided eye contact. Still, I continued. "It's about Megan." As soon as I mentioned her name, John's eyes widened. His nostrils flared, and he suddenly snapped. "What?" "I'm tired. I have to get up early tomorrow, and I need to sleep. Unlike you, I actually work." With that, he slammed the bedroom door shut. Stunned, I was speechless. I couldn't understand why John was so angry. Where had the kind, family-loving John gone? The trust one had built in him was crumbling. A few weeks later, our marriage completely fell apart. I got Megan pregnant. I want a divorce. John brought Megan to our home after work. He suddenly knelt down and said this. Next to him, Megan stood quietly, looking down and gently rubbing her belly. I had sensed the signs of this coming, so I calmly looked down at John's thinning top. "Really? I see." With his forehead pressed to the floor, John whispered a small apology, "I'm sorry." If he were truly sorry, he wouldn't have cheated in the first place. John has destroyed his simple, happy family all on his own. And they still don't realize the path ahead is a mire. Pregnant, huh? What are you doing at your age, past 60? Don't treat me like an old man. Age doesn't matter. Megan said so herself. We just fell in love. Age is irrelevant. John seems completely lost in his infatuation. It's bad enough to have an affair, but to do it with my sister is beyond despicable. Megan said she's loved me for a long time. Seeing a man over 60 blush like a schoolboy is simply nauseating. John and Megan exchanged bashful glances. I never looked at Megan in that way, I swear. But the other day, she invited me out for drinks without you knowing and confessed her feelings. She said she couldn't hold back anymore, that she finally had the courage to be honest. I couldn't ignore her bravery. I had to face it properly. He talks as if it's some sort of pure love story, ignoring the fact that he's married with children. He also forgets that he and Megan are family. You've been busy with work lately and not home because you've been seeing Megan? Well, yes. It might have been a performance, but John looked down, seeming ashamed. Even if I yelled at them and slapped them right now, they couldn't complain. But instead of showing my anger, I calmly took out a document from the drawer. All right. Fine, let's get a divorce. I handed him the divorce papers. I had prepared them, anticipating this moment. John looked up. His face was full of hope. His cheeks were so relaxed with an unmistakable smile that it was infuriating. Like accepting a gift, John reached for the papers. Then I'll leave this house. John took the papers, and I stated calmly. His fingers twitched, and he dropped the papers. With a serene smile, I picked them up and handed them back. Here are the divorce papers. You'll take care of Dad. The smiles on John and Megan's faces vanished. What? Taking care of Dad is your job. For the first time, I frowned at John's words. An affair and divorce were within my expectations. But being forced to continue caring for my father-in-law was beyond understanding. Once I divorced John, his father would be a complete stranger to me. Why should I continue to care for a difficult stranger? Don't abandon Dad. You're getting paid for it. Paid? You mean the $300 a month? Exactly. John puffed out his chest. Normally, you wouldn't get paid for taking care of your father-in-law. But Dad gives you $300. It's a business transaction. I was so stunned by his ridiculous argument that I felt my soul leave my body. I looked helplessly at John and Megan. Feeling pity for my confusion, Megan laughed softly. Sis, you're unemployed, right? You should be happy to get $300 just for taking care of Dad. John and I will be busy with our baby. So we're counting on you. The apologetic attitude from before had vanished. John and Megan only think about themselves. I glared at Megan with disdain. Impossible. Megan, you love taking care of the elderly, don't you? I wouldn't want to take away that role from you. Now, John and Megan both looked confused. It was understandable for John, but why was Megan looking bewildered too? Maybe she didn't recognize her actions as the vile betrayal they were. Wow, Megan and John, huh? I'm surprised. Maybe you actually prefer Dad to John? What? I could see panic in Megan's eyes. It was John who raised his voice in anger, instead of Megan, who stood there with a strained expression. Don't say such things. Megan has loved me faithfully. Dad is 90 years old. The idea of him being romantically involved with someone in their 30s is absurd. It's impossible. Wait, didn't you say age doesn't matter? John's hair looked like it was about to stand on end. His hands were trembling with rage. Though it seemed dangerous to push him further, I needed to get my point across. Megan, age doesn't matter, right? After all, you said you wanted to take care of an elderly person, to be there for them at the end. Isn't that why you've been trying to charm men in their 90s? Megan's face turned bright red. What? John is still too young for you at 60. Your sweet spot is men in their 90s, right? I smiled as I asked, but Megan could only open and close her mouth like a fish, unable to speak. Since Megan couldn't explain, I decided to tell John clearly. Megan isn't satisfied with men old enough to be her father. She prefers men old enough to be her grandfather. Her husband is in his 90s. After all. What? Husband? John's voice rose to a high pitch. No, that can't be. It's true. So, are you planning to divorce me and marry Megan? Or does Megan want to keep things informal because she's already married? She probably made up some excuse about feeling guilty because you're her sister's husband. But the real reason is she can't legally marry you. John turned pale and looked at Megan for confirmation. He wanted her to deny it, but Megan just bit her lip and looked away. That's not true, is it? The elation John felt from Megan's attention turned into a crushing realization. John grabbed his head in disbelief. His confusion soon turned to anger, and he grabbed Megan by the shoulders. Megan. Is what Mary's saying true? Tell me it's not. Tears welled up in Megan's eyes. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to deceive you. She admitted her mistake honestly. I felt a bit relieved, but it seemed Megan was much more cunning than I had thought. I was tricked too. Megan buried her face in John's chest, playing the part of a helpless victim. It's true that I'm married. I was sweet-talked by a matchmaking agency and ended up married to an elderly man I barely knew. They took advantage of me because I'm naive and inexperienced. Isn't that terrible? Suppressing my urge to interject, I watched the scene unfold. John's face showed a mix of sympathy and anger as he looked at her tear-filled eyes. He opened his mouth to speak but couldn't find the words. I only love you, John. Megan hugged John tightly. The baby loves you too, John. It seemed John's mind was made up as he hugged her back tightly. Megan. I love you and the baby too. It's awful that you were tricked into marriage. John embraced Megan passionately. Seriously. John was a fool. Of course, he was confirmed a fool the moment he recklessly pursued his wife's sister. But to declare his love for Megan even after learning she was already married is unbelievable. From between John's arms, Megan sent me a triumphant smile. I was starting to get a headache. I didn't want to see my husband and sister cozying up to each other. First, I'll make sure you can divorce that old man, John said. Wait, actually. Confident that she had John on her side, Megan revealed a secret. I don't think a divorce is necessary. What? Why? What about marrying me? Megan calmed the increasingly agitated John. She batted her eyes dramatically. You see, my husband is 90 years old. He's been hospitalized for the past 6 months with worsening health. And the doctors say he'll never return home. I don't need a divorce. Soon, I'll be a grieving widow, and I'll be all yours, John. John's mouth twisted in dissatisfaction. He wanted to marry her quickly because he loved her. But Megan's next words made his eyes light up. And you know, my husband is very wealthy. So when he passes away, I'll inherit a lot of money. What? John's voice brightened noticeably. He couldn't hide his excitement. If your husband, who tricked you into marriage, is already weak, it would indeed be cruel to divorce him now. We can wait until his final days. That's right, John, you're so kind. As his wife, I want to at least offer some incense at his funeral. With sly smiles, they pretended to be kind-hearted. After doing a good deed for the old man, we'll be rich. Oh John, even if we say rich, it's just $2 or $3 million. Wow, millions. We're going to be so happy. Their greed was evident. I wondered when they'd realize that the dreamers were actually them. Sorry to ruin their joy, but I wanted to get away from them as soon as possible. John first signed the divorce papers. When I spoke, John turned to me with a beaming smile. Divorce, right. Okay. And actually, you don't have to take care of Dad anymore. With that kind of money coming, we can just put him in a facility. I used to think the cost was a waste, but things have changed. Anyway, Dad doesn't have long left, he'll probably pass soon. Sorry you won't be getting your $300 anymore. John winked and offered a light-hearted apology. It seemed that young Megan's affection had turned the once serious John into a frivolous man. Or maybe it was the promise of a fortune. 25 years of marriage. The passionate love of our youth had mellowed, but I had always valued John as family. But now, my love for John had completely vanished. Be happy. I withdrew without any resistance. Soon after, our divorce was finalized. Since John expected to inherit millions, he readily paid the alimony and division of assets I demanded. Taking my whole $100,000 savings, you're a devil. Even with his bank account emptied, John was all smiles, confident in his future wealth. Well, the alimony is paid, so we're completely done. Take care of the money. If you come crying for help later, I won't be there. The ones who would need help were John and Megan. I knew a critical fact. They realized it a few months after the divorce. Help us. What should we do? As expected, Megan and John came running to my parents' house. I had returned to my parents' place, being taken care of just as Megan had left. Of course, my parents had disowned the two who had committed such a grave betrayal. You were told, never show your face again, yet here you are, crying to our parents and me in desperation. Even though their beloved daughter was pleading for help, my parents remained silent with expressionless faces. I was tricked by the old man I married. I had received news from someone that Megan's legally registered husband had passed away. Megan and John should have been laughing, having inherited millions. But now, they were trembling with pale faces, indicating they knew the truth. So, the inheritance is $2 or $3 million, right? That's enviable. But what do you mean you were tricked? Is it possible the inheritance was actually $10 million or so? When I teased, Megan's face flushed red. 10 million. How did you know? Megan's eyes flared with anger. Oh, it really was 10 million? That's incredible. But was it negative inheritance? $10 million is an unimaginable amount. I knew everything. Megan's body tensed and started shaking in confusion and anger. Megan, you were volunteering by giving dreams to an elderly man, right? It's a noble act. But how appropriate is it for a volunteer to meddle so much in someone's family? I gently questioned Megan, who now looked like a wild animal baring its teeth. You've been acting like a victim, but who was the deceiver? It was you, Megan. You got close to an elderly man without any romantic feelings? Whispered sweet words about love and caring for him in his old age, manipulated him into leaving everything to you in his will. But you never acted like a wife, only visiting him occasionally in the hospital. Wasn't your promise to care for him a lie? Wasn't your declaration of love a lie? I pitied Megan, who couldn't even speak through her constricted throat. Of course it was a lie. From the start, you were after his inheritance. Anyone could see that. Maybe your husband figured out your deceit too. That's why her husband left all his assets to Megan. He hid the fact that there was a massive negative inheritance. He understood her true intentions and enjoyed the romance for what it was. An old man pretending to be wealthy to attract a young woman, and a young woman pretending to love him for his inheritance. They were a perfect match. If only you had heeded the pleas of his son, Mark, to leave. The man arguing with Megan in front of the hospital wasn't her boyfriend. He was her husband's son, Mark. $10 million of debt is significant, but you must have enjoyed quite a bit during his life, right? Mark mentioned you taking jewelry and clothes that belonged to his deceased mother despite his objections. Mark knew about the negative inheritance. It was clear Megan was after the inheritance, and Mark thought she was just trying to grab all the valuables before his father passed away. Mark was more hurt by you taking his late mother's keepsakes than the cash from the safe. Even hearing this, Megan clenched her teeth and stomped her feet in frustration. That old geezer. I was kind to him, and he repaid me with betrayal. It's outrageous that Megan, who was deceiving him, would hold a grudge. Blinded by greed, she even made her husband write a will excluding Mark to ensure she got everything. A gold digger like Megan couldn't possibly understand the feelings of Mark and his late mother. Mary, you knew all this and kept quiet? You heartless woman. That's a serious crime. John, ignoring his own position, harshly criticized me. Oh, should I have told you? I thought Megan knew about the huge debt. I mean, she was his wife, right? It's normal to know about your household's finances. I said, deliberately feigning remorse. But you're right. Even between spouses or family, there are things we don't know about each other. Just as John said, knowing something important and not sharing it is also questionable. I deeply reflected on this. Megan looked completely despondent, her eyes rolling back in her head. She seemed to be losing consciousness. When I quietly checked her belly, I noticed it was slightly rounded. To avoid further complaints later, I'll tell you now, though it might seem meddlesome. I pointed at Megan's belly. The baby inside Megan isn't yours, John. What? Oh, you didn't know? Even a loving couple can have many secrets. I'll share what I know out of goodwill. Megan's true love is a young man at a nightclub. Actually, she prefers younger guys. Her favorite boy is only 20. John. He's younger than our own children. Isn't that a surprise? John seemed utterly bewildered, his knees shaking uncontrollably. What? No way. It's true. Mark had uncovered this information. He couldn't stand seeing family memories trampled, so he dug up dirt on Megan to get rid of her. But no matter what he revealed, Megan remained unyielding. That's not true. The baby is John's. With vacant eyes, Megan weakly denied the truth. John, whose mind had been in a daze, finally snapped back to reality. I always thought something was off. We only slept together once, in a drunken moment. The idea that it resulted in a miracle pregnancy always felt wrong. The fact that John was so easily fooled by Megan speaks volumes about his foolishness. He must have harbored feelings for Megan all along, making him an easy target. I don't care about you anymore. Divorce, divorce. John, now aggressive, tried to push Megan away. No. Don't abandon me. We even picked out names for the baby together. We're already a family. I don't care. I can't raise another man's child. Divorce. As the two argued, I feigned surprise. No way, did you already register your marriage? Megan, that's so inappropriate, especially before your husband's mourning period ends. But I guess you're stuck with John now. John, you should just accept and love your wife and child. Megan clung to John like a leech. This situation would drain John to the bone. John looked at me, pleading for help, but I just smiled and tilted my head. John, don't look so distressed. You're now officially Megan's husband, so feel free to enjoy your relationship. I heard a faint, desperate no, but marrying Megan was John's decision. There's no way he suddenly wants out. Cheating and getting cheated on must deepen your bond. Well, best wishes to you both. Having moved on, I genuinely wished them happiness. Finally, my father, who had remained silent, spoke up. Get out. My mother scattered salt as she chimed in. I won't come back. I never show our baby. Megan was disowned by her parents who had doted on her. She spat a final insult before dragging a now lifeless John away. Those two might actually suit each other, I said, smiling. My mother gently hugged my shoulder. Despite Megan's declaration, they showed up at our parents' house together just a year later. They approached, looking awkward but desperate. Hey, sis, could you do some work for us? We can pay $300 a month. Hearing $300, I immediately understood. For Dad? Yes. We're thinking of switching from a facility to home care. I didn't see why it should be my responsibility. With a sigh, I saw John grab my hand desperately. We have no one else to rely on but you, Mary. If they didn't want to care for him themselves, why switch from a facility? Dad has ample savings, so keeping him in a facility should be easy. But switching to home care means they can't afford the facility anymore and have no other option. Oh, so you've run out of money already? I nodded knowingly. John's deferential demeanor shifted. Did you know about this? He asked. About what? Are you referring to the money Dad gives to those who help him? John's anger surged through his body. As he dramatically scratched his head, I explained. He used to give me $300 too. He's often angry and intimidating, but perhaps he does have some gratitude. Or maybe it's just his way of ensuring things get done. He even used to tell the caregivers to keep it and hand them money regularly. Even after moving into the facility. Dad has always been a bit of a show-off. He would hand cash to anyone who showed him respect, even to polite kindergartners, saying, "Buy yourself a notebook." It seemed less about gratitude and more about wanting to be admired. He always wanted to be respected and hold a position of authority. That old bastard. What a waste of money. If he has money to give to strangers, he should give it to his family. I can't believe it. A broke, grumpy old man is just a burden. Apparently, Megan targeted John thinking she could have it both ways. First, John, a kind-hearted man, would be easily fooled and gladly take care of Megan and her child. And then, Megan's primary target, the wealthy 90-year-old man. The facility called, saying Dad was feeling down and asked us to visit. I thought, great, but life doesn't always go as planned. I left him alone, pretending to be busy, thinking he'd get weaker, lose his mind, and pass away soon. But that old man is healthier than ever. He was frail, but now he's walking again. He's even doing aerobics with other elderly folks. It's ridiculous. Professionals make a difference. It's clear that Dad is more lively than when I was taking care of him. Oh, I'm relieved to hear Dad is doing well. At this rate, he might live to be 100. But John, since your father and I are not related, I won't be taking care of him, no matter how much money you offer. I said this with a smile. Despair spread across John and Megan's faces. So, what should we do? Megan cried out in tears. I can't do caregiving, and keeping him in the facility costs money. Leaving John is an option, but then there's that $10 million debt. I just can't handle anymore. It's bewildering that someone would think deceiving a wealthy elderly person or stealing her sister's husband is okay. Megan's selfish demands are just as baffling. I can't handle this, even if she is my sister. I'm sorry, but I don't understand either. Anyway, I wish his health and longevity. I waved lightly at the crying Megan and John. Goodbye. I closed the front door. They didn't seem to have the energy to try to reopen it. From the other side, I heard a faint, "What should we do?" "Live as you please," I whispered through the door. Afterward, my parents and I moved. My parents are nearing 80. Our new home is a barrier-free apartment. Today, a cute visitor was here. Wow, you're already walking. The little 1-year-old was toddling around. This child was Megan's. Luckily, the baby was taken in by a childless relative of John's. Though not related by blood, the child was certainly happier than living with her biological parents. Technically, she was Megan's child. Since she was also my parents' grandchild, the kind relative occasionally brought her to visit. My parents, who had been sitting more often lately due to weakening legs, now stood up and followed the baby. Careful, careful, don't fall, they said, staying close. The sight of the baby and my parents toddling along together was truly heartwarming. The baby will continue to grow rapidly. My parents won't have time to complain about their aching backs. I hope the energy from the baby helps them stay healthy and live long lives.